My brother-in-law bullied me for years about my weight. After my transformation, his wife started hitting on me. The first time I met my sister's boyfriend, I was 17 and pushing close to 300 pounds. I remember walking into that cramped apartment they shared near downtown, my shirt clinging to my back with sweat from just climbing 2 flights of stairs. He took one look at me, and I saw that flash of judgment in his eyes, the same look I'd been getting from people my entire life. But he didn't say anything that day. He just shook my hand with this weak grip and went back to his video game. That was 8 years ago. 8 years of family dinners where he'd make little comments about my plate being too full. 8 years of holiday gatherings where he'd pat his flat stomach and talk about how easy it was to stay in shape if you just had willpower. 8 years of him calling me buddy with that condescending tone, like I was some kind of charity case he had to tolerate because I was related to his wife. My sister never said anything. She'd just give me these apologetic looks across the table, like she was sorry. But what could she do? They got married 3 years ago and he became family, which meant I was stuck with him at every birthday party, every barbecue, every Christmas morning. The comments got worse after the wedding. Maybe he felt more secure in his position, more entitled to share his opinions about my lifestyle choices. I worked at a warehouse back then, loading trucks from 6 in the morning until 3 in the afternoon. It was physical work. But I'd come home exhausted and order pizza or Chinese food, eating in front of the TV until I fell asleep. Weekends were for sleeping in and playing games online, maybe going to the corner store for energy drinks and snacks. I knew I was killing myself slowly, but I didn't know how to stop. Every time I tried to diet, I'd last maybe a week before falling back into old patterns. The breaking point came last summer at my nephew's birthday party. My sister had decorated the backyard with balloons and streamers, and all the kids were running around in the sprinkler. I was sitting in one of those plastic lawn chairs, feeling it creak under my weight, when my brother-in-law walked over with a beer in his hand. He stood there for a minute, watching the kids play, then turned to me with this smug smile. He started talking about how he'd been thinking about getting a gym membership, how he wanted to bulk up a little for summer. Then he looked down at me and said maybe I should come with him, that they probably had beginner programs for people in my situation. The way he said situation made my stomach turn. But what really got to me wasn't the comment itself. It was watching my 4-year-old nephew run over to us, out of breath and grinning, and seeing how my brother-in-law scooped him up effortlessly. The kid wrapped his arms around his uncle's neck, and they spun around together, both of them laughing. I realized in that moment that I couldn't do that. I couldn't chase my nephew around the yard, or give him piggyback rides, or be the kind of uncle who was actually present in his life, instead of just the fat guy sitting in the corner. That night I threw away everything in my kitchen. Every box of cereal, every bag of chips, every frozen dinner. I filled 3 garbage bags and dragged them to the curb, feeling lighter with each step. The next morning I walked to the grocery store and bought vegetables I didn't know how to cook, chicken breasts that looked intimidating, and a water bottle big enough to carry everywhere. The first month was brutal. I'd wake up at 5 in the morning and walk around my neighborhood before work, my legs burning and my lungs screaming. I'd meal prep on Sundays, cooking plain chicken and steamed broccoli in bulk, eating the same thing every day because I was afraid to experiment and mess up. I lost 12 pounds that first month, and it felt like nothing, like I was moving a mountain one pebble at a time. But something strange happened in month 2. The walking got easier. I started looking forward to those early morning walks, to the quiet streets, and the way the sunrise painted everything gold. I discovered podcasts and audiobooks, turning my walks into learning sessions. I started staying up later reading about nutrition and fitness, becoming obsessed with understanding how my body worked. By month 6, I'd lost 60 pounds, and people at work started noticing. They'd comment on how different I looked, how much more energy I seemed to have. I'd started lifting weights in my apartment, just a basic setup I found on sale, but I was getting stronger every week. My clothes were hanging loose, and I had to buy new belts, new pants, new everything. The family didn't see me much during those first 6 months. I'd make excuses to skip dinners and parties, claiming I was busy with work or not feeling well. Truth was, I didn't want them to see me until I was ready. I didn't want my brother-in-law making comments about my progress or offering unsolicited advice. I wanted to show up one day completely transformed, to see the shock on his face. That opportunity came at my sister's housewarming party. They'd bought a new place across town, a beautiful 2-story house with a big backyard and a 2-car garage. The party was scheduled for a Saturday afternoon in late fall, and I knew everyone would be there. Extended family, friends, neighbors. It would be the perfect reveal. I'd lost 95 pounds by then. I was wearing clothes that actually fit, clothes that showed off the muscle I'd been building. My face was thinner, my posture was straighter, and I felt like a completely different person. I spent extra time getting ready that morning, trimming my beard and picking out an outfit that made me feel confident. When I walked into their new house, the reaction was immediate. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. People stared. My sister's jaw dropped, and she covered her mouth with her hands. But it was my brother-in-law's reaction that I'd been waiting for. He was standing by the kitchen island, holding a beer and talking to some neighbor when he saw me walk in. The look on his face was priceless. Confusion first, then recognition, then something that looked almost like fear. He didn't say anything for the longest time, just stood there staring while I made my rounds, accepting congratulations and answering questions about my transformation. People wanted to know my secret, my routine, my motivation. I kept my answers vague, focusing on the positive changes rather than the pain that had driven me to change. But the real surprise came from his wife. She'd always been polite to me before, friendly in that generic way people are with their spouse's extended family. She was attractive in an obvious way, the kind of woman who'd been pretty in high school and had married young to lock down her high school sweetheart. She worked part-time at a salon and spent most of her free time at the gym or getting her nails done. About an hour into the party, she cornered me in the kitchen while I was refilling my water bottle. She complimented my transformation, standing closer than necessary and touching my arm while she talked. She asked about my workout routine, my diet, whether I had a trainer. Her questions felt different from everyone else's, more personal somehow. Over the next few weeks, she started texting me. It started innocent enough, questions about protein shakes and gym recommendations. But the messages got more frequent, more personal. She'd send me photos of healthy meals she was making, asking for my opinion. She'd complain about feeling unmotivated and ask if I wanted to work out together sometime. I should have shut it down immediately. I should have told my sister or confronted my brother-in-law. But there was something intoxicating about the attention, especially from someone who'd never given me a second glance before. For years I'd been invisible, the fat brother-in-law who sat in the corner and kept quiet. Now suddenly I was getting texts from a woman who wanted to spend time with me. The texting escalated over the next month. She'd send me photos of herself at the gym, asking for form checks on her exercises. She'd complain about her marriage, about feeling unappreciated and taken for granted. She'd ask me to meet her for coffee to talk about fitness and life goals. I kept making excuses, knowing it was wrong but not wanting to completely cut off the attention. Then came the night that changed everything. My brother-in-law was out of town for work, some conference in another state. My sister was visiting friends for the weekend. I was at home, meal prepping for the week ahead, when I got a text asking if I wanted to come over and help move some furniture. She said she wanted to rearrange their bedroom and needed someone strong to help. I knew I shouldn't go. Every rational part of my brain was screaming warnings. But I'd been isolated for so long, focused so intensely on my transformation, that I was starving for human connection. I told myself I was just helping family, that it was innocent. When I got to their house, she answered the door in workout clothes that left little to the imagination. She led me upstairs to their bedroom, where she'd already moved some smaller pieces around. She asked me to help move the dresser to the opposite wall, and as we lifted it together, she kept finding reasons to brush against me or touch my arms. After we finished moving things around, she offered me a beer. We sat on their couch and she started talking about how unhappy she was, how she felt like she'd married too young and missed out on experiencing life. She said she'd been watching me transform myself, and it had inspired her to think about making changes too. The conversation got more intense. She moved closer to me on the couch, her hand finding my thigh as she talked. She told me how attractive I'd become, how impressed she was with my dedication and discipline. She said she'd always found intelligence and drive sexy, and that I embodied both of those qualities now. I should have left then. I should have made an excuse and walked out the door. But when she leaned in to kiss me, I didn't stop her. We ended up in their guest bedroom, crossing lines that couldn't be uncrossed. Afterward, lying there in the dark, I felt sick with guilt and shame. This wasn't who I wanted to be. This wasn't what my transformation was supposed to accomplish. I left without saying much, mumbling something about having to get up early for work. She texted me the next morning like nothing had happened, asking if I wanted to grab lunch sometime. I didn't respond. I couldn't face what we'd done or what it meant for my family. The guilt ate at me for weeks. I stopped going to family gatherings, making excuses about work or feeling under the weather. I threw myself even harder into my fitness routine, trying to punish myself through exhaustion. I'd stay at the gym for hours, pushing my body to its limits, hoping physical pain would distract from the emotional turmoil. But the universe has a way of revealing secrets, especially ugly ones. 3 weeks after that night, my sister called me crying. She'd found text messages on her husband's phone, messages from some woman at his work. They were having an affair, had been for months. She was devastated, talking about divorce and custody arrangements for my nephew. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Here I was carrying around guilt about my own betrayal, and he'd been cheating on my sister the entire time. All those years of him making me feel small and worthless, and he was the one with no moral compass. The irony was almost too much to handle. My sister moved out that weekend, bringing my nephew to stay with my parents while she figured out what to do next. The family rallied around her, offering support and comfort. My brother-in-law became persona non grata overnight, uninvited from gatherings and blocked on social media. The divorce proceedings started within a month. But I still couldn't shake the guilt about what I'd done. Even though he'd been cheating first, even though he'd treated me terribly for years, I'd still crossed a line with his wife. I'd let my need for validation override my moral compass. The attention had felt good in the moment, but it had come at the cost of my integrity. His wife tried to contact me several times during the divorce proceedings. She'd text me asking if we could talk, if I wanted to grab coffee and discuss what had happened between us. She seemed to think that since both of our relationships with him were ending, maybe we could explore something together. I never responded to those messages. The divorce was finalized 6 months later. My sister got primary custody of my nephew and moved into a smaller apartment across town. She seemed stronger somehow, more confident in her independence. She'd started taking evening classes at the community college and had made new friends through a single parents group. My brother-in-law disappeared from our lives completely. I heard through mutual friends that he'd moved to another state, starting fresh somewhere new. His ex-wife stayed in town for a few more months before moving back to her hometown to be closer to her family. She sent me one final text before she left, telling me that she didn't regret what happened between us and that she hoped I'd find happiness. I'd lost 120 pounds by then. My transformation was complete, at least physically. I'd gone from nearly 300 pounds to a lean, muscular 180. I'd discovered a love for running and had completed my first marathon. I'd started rock climbing and hiking, activities that would have been impossible before. My confidence had grown along with my strength. But the emotional transformation was messier, more complicated. I'd learned that physical change doesn't automatically solve psychological problems. I discovered that revenge, even unintentional revenge, doesn't taste as sweet as you imagine it will. I'd realized that validation from others, especially validation based on appearance, is hollow and temporary. The guilt about that night with his wife faded gradually, replaced by a deeper understanding of human complexity. We're all flawed, all carrying around damage and making mistakes. His years of cruelty didn't excuse my betrayal, but they provided context for it. I'd been a hurt person acting out of hurt, just like he probably was. I started volunteering at a local community center, helping with their youth programs. Working with kids who struggled with weight and self-esteem issues gave me purpose beyond my own transformation. I could share my story without sharing the ugly parts, focusing on the positive changes that came from taking control of your health. My nephew, now 6 years old, started spending weekends with me. We'd go hiking or to the park, and I'd teach him about taking care of his body and eating well. He was fascinated by my transformation, asking to see before and after photos and wanting to know how I'd gotten so strong. Being the uncle I'd always wanted to be felt like redemption. My sister and I grew closer through everything. She'd thank me for being there for her during the divorce, for helping her move and babysitting my nephew when she needed time to herself. She never knew about what had happened between me and her ex-husband's wife, and I decided that secret would stay buried. Some truths cause more damage than healing. I started dating again, something I'd avoided for years due to my weight and self-consciousness. Online dating was awkward at first, but I gradually learned to connect with people who valued more than just physical appearance. I met someone special at a hiking group, a woman who appreciated my dedication to health and fitness, but also challenged me intellectually and emotionally. The anniversary of my transformation journey came and went without much fanfare. I'd achieved everything I'd set out to accomplish and more. I was healthy, strong, confident, and surrounded by people who genuinely cared about me. The man who'd motivated my change through his cruelty was long gone, but the lessons I'd learned remained. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd never lost the weight. Would I still be sitting in that plastic chair, feeling it creak under my weight, watching life pass me by? Would my brother-in-law still be making his little comments, secure in his position as the family's golden boy? Would his marriage have survived if I hadn't been there to complicate things? But those questions don't matter now. I can't change the past, and I wouldn't want to. Every mistake, every moment of weakness, every small victory contributed to who I became. The transformation wasn't just about losing weight or building muscle. It was about learning to value myself, to set boundaries, to make decisions based on my own moral compass rather than other people's expectations. My nephew calls me his strong uncle now, and that title means more to me than any compliment about my appearance. When he grows up, I want him to remember that strength comes from more than just physical power. I want him to know that real transformation happens from the inside out, that changing your body is just the beginning of changing your life. The man who used to bully me about my weight taught me something valuable, even if he didn't mean to. He showed me that people who put others down are usually trying to build themselves up. He demonstrated that cruelty often comes from insecurity, that the loudest voices are sometimes the most afraid. Most importantly, he motivated me to prove that I was worth more than his narrow definition of value. I'm grateful for my transformation, all of it. The physical changes opened doors and built confidence, but the emotional growth taught me about resilience and self-worth. I learned that revenge is less satisfying than simply living well, that the best way to respond to cruelty is with kindness and success. Today I'm training for my second marathon, planning a hiking trip with my girlfriend, and looking forward to teaching my nephew how to ride a bike this summer. I'm not the same person who walked into that cramped apartment 8 years ago, sweating and insecure and desperate for acceptance. I'm someone who accepts himself, who values his own worth independent of other people's opinions. The brother-in-law who used to make me feel small is gone, disappeared into whatever life he's building for himself now. But the strength I found in response to his cruelty remains. That's the real transformation, the one that matters most. Not the weight I lost or the muscle I gained, but the person I became in the process of changing everything. Looking back now, I realize that my journey was never really about him or his wife or even about the weight itself. It was about learning to value myself enough to make difficult changes, to push through discomfort, to become the person I'd always wanted to be. The physical transformation was just the visible part of a much deeper process of self-discovery and growth. The warehouse job I'd been doing for years started feeling different after my transformation. I had more energy, more confidence, and I began to see opportunities I'd been blind to before. I started taking on additional responsibilities, volunteering for overtime shifts, and eventually got promoted to a supervisor position. The extra income allowed me to move out of my cramped apartment into a nicer place with a proper home gym setup. My relationship with food completely changed during this time. Instead of using meals as emotional comfort or entertainment, I learned to see food as fuel for my body and mind. I became passionate about cooking, experimenting with new recipes and flavors. I'd spend Sunday afternoons meal prepping for the week, finding meditation in the chopping and seasoning and careful portioning. Friends started asking me for recipes and nutrition advice, amazed by the variety and creativity in my healthy meals. The dating scene presented its own challenges and revelations. My first few dates after the transformation were awkward affairs where I felt like I was wearing a costume, pretending to be someone I wasn't sure I really was yet. Some women were clearly only interested in my new physique, treating me like a trophy or a project. Others seemed suspicious of my dramatic change, wondering what I was hiding or if I'd maintain my new lifestyle long-term. But gradually, I learned to navigate these interactions with more authenticity and confidence. I met women through my hiking group, through volunteer work, through friends of friends. These connections felt more genuine because they were based on shared interests and values rather than just physical attraction. I learned to be upfront about my journey, my struggles, and my goals, finding that honesty attracted the kind of people I actually wanted in my life. The woman I mentioned from the hiking group became someone special over the course of several months. She was a teacher who'd moved to our city a few years earlier, someone who valued intellectual conversation and outdoor adventures. She'd struggled with her own body image issues in the past and appreciated my dedication to health without being intimidated by it. We'd spend hours talking about books, movies, life philosophy, and future dreams. Our relationship developed slowly, built on friendship and mutual respect. She was the first person I told about that night with my brother-in-law's wife, and her response surprised me. Instead of judgment or disappointment, she showed understanding and compassion. She helped me see that carrying guilt about past mistakes was less important than learning from them and making better choices moving forward. My nephew's relationship with me became one of the most rewarding aspects of my new life. As he grew older, he became fascinated with fitness and nutrition, asking endless questions about how bodies work and why exercise is important. I taught him to cook simple, healthy meals, and we'd spend Saturday mornings preparing snacks for his school week. He'd proudly tell his friends about his uncle, who used to be really big but got super strong, treating my transformation like a superhero origin story. The volunteer work at the community center expanded over time. I started leading weekend hiking groups for teenagers, teaching basic nutrition classes, and mentoring young men who struggled with weight and self-esteem issues. Sharing my story with people who were facing similar challenges gave me a sense of purpose I'd never experienced before. I could see myself in their struggles and offer hope that change was possible. One of the most profound realizations came during a particularly difficult hike I was leading with a group of teenage boys. We were climbing a steep trail on a hot summer day, and one of the kids was struggling badly, falling behind and getting frustrated with himself. I stayed back with him, encouraging him to take breaks and reminding him that the goal wasn't to keep up with others, but to challenge himself at his own pace. As we finally reached the summit together, both of us sweating and exhausted but triumphant, I realized that this was what my transformation had really been about. Not revenge or validation or proving anything to anyone else, but about becoming the kind of person who could help others find their own strength. The kid's face when he saw the view from the top, the pride in his voice when he called his mom to tell her about the accomplishment, reminded me why the journey had been worth every difficult moment. My sister's life stabilized and improved dramatically after her divorce. She finished her degree and got a better job, moved into a house with a small yard where my nephew could play safely. She started dating again, eventually meeting a man who treated both her and my nephew with genuine kindness and respect. Watching her rebuild her life with such grace and determination inspired me to keep pushing forward with my own goals and dreams. The physical aspects of my transformation continued to evolve. I completed not just one marathon but several, eventually qualifying for and running the Boston Marathon. I took up rock climbing seriously, joining a local climbing gym and eventually tackling outdoor routes that would have been unimaginable during my heaviest years. I learned to snowboard, tried my hand at martial arts, and discovered a love for swimming that surprised me. But beyond the athletic achievements, I found joy in simple physical activities that I'd been unable to enjoy before. Playing catch with my nephew without getting winded. Hiking for hours without my feet or back hurting. Sleeping through the night without snoring or sleep apnea. Buying clothes in regular sizes from regular stores. These everyday improvements in quality of life meant more than any dramatic fitness milestone. The psychological transformation was ongoing and sometimes unexpected. I had to learn to handle attention and compliments gracefully, something I'd never needed to do before. I had to develop new social skills and confidence in group settings. I had to figure out how to dress my new body, how to carry myself with proper posture, how to make eye contact during conversations. These might seem like small things, but they were fundamental changes in how I moved through the world. There were setbacks and challenges along the way. I injured my knee during a particularly ambitious hiking trip and had to take several months off from running. I went through a period of depression during one winter where I struggled to maintain my eating and exercise habits. I had moments of self-doubt where I wondered if I could really maintain my new lifestyle long-term, if I was just one stressful period away from reverting to old patterns. But each challenge taught me something valuable about resilience and self-compassion. I learned that perfection wasn't the goal, that consistency mattered more than intensity, that asking for help was a sign of strength rather than weakness. I developed a support network of friends who shared my values and could offer encouragement during difficult times. The 5-year anniversary of my transformation journey felt like a major milestone. I'd maintained my weight loss, continued to grow stronger and more athletic, and built a life that felt authentic and fulfilling. I celebrated by organizing a charity hike with my volunteer group, raising money for youth fitness programs in underserved communities. The event brought together people from all parts of my life, creating connections and friendships that extended beyond that single day. My brother-in-law's name rarely came up in family conversations anymore. He'd become a footnote in our family history, someone who'd caused pain but ultimately led to positive changes. My sister had moved on completely, building a new life with her partner and focusing on raising my nephew in a stable, loving environment. The anger and resentment that had once consumed so much emotional energy had faded into indifference and then into something approaching gratitude. I understood now that his cruelty had been a catalyst rather than a cause. The desire to change had been inside me all along, waiting for the right motivation to emerge. His comments and judgments had provided that motivation, but the strength and determination to actually transform my life had come from within. I'd always had the capacity for change, I just needed to believe in myself enough to access it. The relationship with my girlfriend deepened into something serious and committed. We moved in together, combining our lives and our dreams for the future. She supported my fitness goals while pursuing her own passions and career advancement. We traveled together, exploring national parks and foreign cities, creating memories that would have been impossible during my heaviest years. We talked about marriage, about starting a family, about building something lasting and meaningful together. My nephew, now approaching his 10th birthday, had become an active, confident kid who loved outdoor adventures and trying new sports. He'd absorbed the lessons about health and self-care, without them feeling like lectures or obligations. He understood that taking care of your body was just part of taking care of yourself, that physical activity was fun rather than punishment, that food was meant to nourish and fuel rather than comfort or distract. The work I was doing with young people through the community center had evolved into something more formal. I'd gotten certified as a fitness trainer and nutritional counselor, starting a small business focused on helping people make sustainable lifestyle changes. My clients weren't just people trying to lose weight, but anyone who wanted to improve their relationship with their body and their health. The work felt meaningful in a way that my warehouse job never had. I still thought about that night with his wife sometimes, but the guilt had transformed into something more complex and ultimately more useful. I'd learned that good people sometimes make bad choices, that moral lapses don't define someone's entire character, that redemption comes through changed behavior rather than endless self-recrimination. The experience had taught me about human complexity and the importance of setting clear boundaries in relationships. The 10th anniversary of my transformation journey passed quietly, marked by a long solo hike in the mountains where I'd first discovered my love for outdoor activities. I spent the day reflecting on everything that had changed, everything I'd learned, everything I'd gained and lost along the way. The man who'd started this journey had been desperate and angry and full of self-hatred. The man who'd emerged was confident and purposeful and genuinely happy with his life. My brother-in-law had inadvertently given me the greatest gift possible, though he'd never intended it that way. He'd shown me that I was capable of dramatic change, that I could overcome seemingly insurmountable obstacles, that I was worth the effort and discipline required to transform my life. His cruelty had been the spark, but I'd built and tended the fire that followed. Today, as I write this, I'm preparing for another marathon, planning my next hiking expedition, and looking forward to proposing to my girlfriend next month. My nephew is learning to drive and asking me to teach him about weight training. My sister is thriving in her career and her relationship. Life has a richness and depth that I never imagined possible during those dark years when I felt trapped by my own body and limitations. The transformation continues, will always continue. Physical fitness is just the foundation for everything else, the base level of self-care that makes all other growth possible. I'm still learning, still challenging myself, still discovering new capabilities and interests. The difference is that now I approach these challenges with confidence rather than fear, with excitement rather than dread. Sometimes people ask me if I'm angry about all those years I lost to obesity and self-hatred, all the experiences I missed and opportunities I passed up. But I'm not angry anymore. Those years were necessary preparation for the man I became. The struggles taught me empathy, the failures taught me resilience, and the pain taught me to value the joy and strength that came afterward. My brother-in-law, wherever he is now, probably has no idea what he set in motion with his casual cruelty. He was just an insecure man trying to make himself feel better by putting someone else down. But his words became the foundation for the most important chapter of my life, the catalyst for changes that rippled out to affect my family, my community, and everyone who's been part of my journey since then. That's the real power of transformation. It doesn't just change you, it changes everyone around you. It creates possibilities that didn't exist before, relationships that couldn't have formed, opportunities that wouldn't have presented themselves. The man who used to sit in that plastic chair, feeling it creak under his weight, could never have imagined the life I'm living now. But he dreamed of it, and that dream was enough to begin the long journey toward making it real.